If you like waterfalls, you have come to the right place, because we are going to the Columbia River Gorge, which is one of the best places in the entire US for photographing waterfalls. Columbia River Gorge, or more specifically the Columbia River Highway, is a 121 kilometer long scenic highway in Oregon between Troutdale and the Dalles. There are numerous beautiful locations on this route, and waterfalls are especially present here among the miles upon miles of hiking trails. Another thing which is important to note is that many of these tourist locations are located rather close to the highway, so there's a big risk of thievery, since it's easy for the thieves to get away really fast, which means that you obviously shouldn't leave big valuables in your car. My original intent was to make the Columbia River Gorge episode into one episode, but I've decided to cut it into 3, but I will release them all in the same week instead. Even though we were in this location for almost a week, we didn't get to see all the big locations. And don't see this as a complete guide to the Columbia River Gorge. There are numerous of other waterfalls to visit here also. The first waterfall on the list is Latourell Waterfall, which is located around 40 kilometers from Portland. It is an easy to approach waterfall with a small trail leading directly to it. The waterfall is rather tall, and with the beautiful basalt rocks on both sides, you get that feeling of something rough and ancient. There are some opportunities for different compositions, but the weather can make it hard, which it did for me, with a lot of wind blowing all the water vapor around. This waterfall is turned towards north, which means you will have to visit it early or late on the day to get it lit by the sun. You'll need a rather wide-angle lens to capture the entire waterfall in one shot. There are trails that lead to the top of the waterfall, but photography-wise there's not much to come after up there. The next waterfall on the list is the world famous Multnomah Falls. I have seen pictures of this waterfall from even before I started photographing. The location, in my opinion, has a very Asian look to it, so it came as a huge surprise to me that it is located just outside of Portland and not high into some Tibetan or Chinese mountains in Southeast Asia. It's also safe to say that these waterfalls are the most famous ones in the entire area. The falls are very easy to approach since they are located at a big tourist area next to the historic highway. Visiting the Multnomah Falls is both a huge experience, but it is also quite annoying when you are a photographer. You may ask why, and the answer is because of one single bush. The bush has its branches placed directly in the angle where the two waterfalls line up with the bridge, so you cannot really get the most obvious shot there. Nevertheless, Multnomah Falls is still a very beautiful place to photograph, and if you just move a bit around you will still be able to get some pretty nice compositions. We visited here in late November and got some very dark-ish, moody pictures, but I can imagine if you go here during the peak of the fall colors, you can get some very, very beautiful pictures too. Further up the historic highway you will find Oneonta Gorge. To get to the gorge, park the car and approach the bridge by following the historic highway towards the Oneonta Tunnel. Do not walk up the hiking trails as we did to begin with. When you are at the bridge, follow the stair down to the stream. Dependent on the amount of water, you will have to be careful here. It's all easier to approach if you bring some Wellingtons. When we were there in November 2016, a huge dam of logs had piled up and blocked the way into the gorge. The dam had created a small pond on the other side, which were around a couple of meters deep. I did get up onto the dam and got a few pictures into the gorge, but of all the places I've ever been as a landscape photographer, that was the place where I felt the most unsafe. The logs were very slippery and you had to look carefully where you placed your arms for support, since some logs were just floating freely in the water. If you put your weight on those, you would just fall into the water and have a hard time getting up again. In this case, a telezoom lens will benefit you a lot since you can't get too close. If the dam is passable, you will be able to find Lower Oneonta Falls on the other side of the gorge. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if so, I would highly appreciate a like. If you want to see even more, you can subscribe to the channel. In the next episode, we will continue through the Columbia River Gorge and visit more waterfalls.